Technology becomes truly transformative only when it eliminates friction, not when it adds features. That line from an anonymous but very wise systems architect perfectly sets the stage for today's conversation. Because if there's one industry built on friction, complexity, and seasonal stress, it's taxes. Yet for the first time in decades, a transformative shift is underway. I'm your host, Ken Umansky, and on this episode of TechKNOWlogy, we're diving into a space that impacts every business, every accountant, and every financial leader, the future of tax preparation in an AI-powered world. And to explore that future, we're joined by two innovators who are redefining how tax work gets done. My first guest is Leroy Kerry, co-founder and CEO of Filed, the AI tax preparer built to help firms deliver faster, better service to their clients. Leroy has a remarkable path. He was the first employee at two Fintech unicorns, where he built the internal tools that kept CFOs and accounting teams running smoothly behind the scenes. After years at the intersection of finance and technology, he turned his focus to the world of U.S. taxes, an industry he saw as painfully underserved and overdue for modernization. His answer is Filed. Joining him is Ralph Carnicer, CPA, head of tax engineering at Filed. Ralph is both a certified public accountant and a seasoned technologist, a rare combination. With nearly 2 decades of experience at Deloitte, BDO, PwC, and KPMG, he brings a depth practitioner's perspective to what tax professionals really need. At Filed, he serves as the bridge between AI engineers and practicing accountants. He also holds a master's in accounting from Florida International University. Leon and Ralph, rather, welcome to TechKNOWlogy. It's great to have you both here today.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, and thanks for having us. What a fantastic introduction. I feel like I should give you one just like this as well.
I know you guys live up to it, so I decided to give you all the background that you have, and I think it's very impressive. Let's start with the big picture, however. As AI is hitting every industry from logistics to retail to insurance, but professional service organizations often move more cautiously. From your vantage point, how are accounting and tax firms approaching AI right now? And tell me about their hopes, their concerns, and the plans you're hearing as they dip their toes into the emerging technology.
Yeah, this is very timely. I think I'll take this question and ask Ralph for his take as well as a tax professional himself, deeply embedded in all things tax firm optimization. So what we see from firms is just like any other industry, they are waking up and listening and hearing that other potential, let's say, partners or even competitors of theirs are approaching AI and getting incredible results. And we are definitely seeing something happening at the top of the firm, let's say pyramid. When we talk about the top 500 accounting firms in the US, they are definitely building internal AI tiger teams who are going out there and assessing vendors. They're even thinking about building their own solutions internally. Some things a little bit easier, some things take a little bit more time, and they partner with vendors like us at Filed. I would say at the mid-sized firm level, let's say the top 5,000 firms, you're definitely seeing a lot of people moving towards using their existing solutions that they already have in place. Maybe they bought a system from a vendor and that vendor is embedding AI in some form. But what's happening under the hood really is maybe it's Filed powering that vendor to offer a new feature. And then at the kind of mom and pop shop level, outside the top 5,000 firms, you got firms who are seeing pressures on them, such as leaving, exiting staff who are leaving them. You've got firms who can't hire enough. You've got firms who are maybe growing because they're acquiring another firm, and then we're giving them an option to build and to bring something into their business as an AI partner to help them now scale for the future. And what we're seeing is the firms that are putting AI into place right now are going to be the ones who really, truly win in the long term.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, I'd say that, based on what I'm seeing in my conversations with firms every day, is, a reluctant optimism in terms of what AI may or may not be able to do for them. I think that they've seen the potential in the technology. I think that a lot of the more forward-facing or the more popular frontier models like OpenAI and Chat and Claude have really opened the gateway and have kind of opened their eyes to what's possible. And I think that what we're doing here is very much taking that technology and refining it to the point where we're getting rid of a huge portion of hallucinations, and we're kind of toning down the generative side of generative AI, and really trying to sharpen up the deterministic side of AI. And I think that's very well appreciated in the context of the industry that we're working in here.
I'm going to get to a question in a few minutes that really gets to how are they using it. But let me talk now about what goes on in other industries. The default narrative around AI is usually cost cutting or efficiency, which of course matters, but you're both talking to firms every day. What business cases for AI are tax firms overlooking? The ones that could transform their competitive position if they embrace them. So, from an AI standpoint, what could they be using that they're not using, and why don't they do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that the biggest thing here is or the most underestimated advantage that these firms can have is their time back, right? We think on the conservative side, we can save firms an hour for every tax return that they prepare. And I'm not talking about a standard W-2 return, right? It's got to have some level of complexity to it. But if you had an hour back for every return that you do, and you're preparing 400 or 500 returns, what are you doing with 400 or 500 hours going forward? And I think that's been the biggest question that firms kind of need to tackle as AI becomes more and more mainstream and becomes more and more commonplace in these firms, right? And I think that the possibilities are very limitless, but they can really take that time to establish themselves as the trusted advisor that every firm wants to be
Yeah.
to their clients.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what Ralph said, we are seeing a shift now at the firm level where the compliant nature of accounting, the free service lines such as bookkeeping, taxes, and audit have always been how firms make their money.
Mhm.
Now you've got you've also had security come in as well recently, where firms are actually doubling down on offering security services, making sure that vendors like ourselves are compliant to the most highest and stringent security standards. But now the fastest growing service line that firms are tapping into is what they call client advisory services, just like Ralph suggested there, being an advisor to businesses, being an advisor to individuals. That's where we're seeing the time being actually utilized accordingly. So that time you get back, people are putting it to advisory, which is now giving them a whole new realm of revenue that they've kind of left on the table for a very long time.
When you say advisory, you're saying it's beyond taxes, it's in all aspects of their business, or is it?
Tax planning, tax advisory, creating legacy, figuring out just what is the best investment strategies for yourselves, and kind of almost become like some. I wouldn't say they hold the designation of financial planning, but they definitely have the ability to help you plan for the future and figure out how you want to effectively save more money. Because if you've got more time, they don't have to just look at documents and look at the data that's in a K1 or a W-2. They're able to pick up context with their taxpayers and figure out what is the future looking like for you, and I can help you plan accordingly. So that's where the advice is coming in, and they're, with all due respect, charging a pretty penny for that, enough money. I hope that phrase translates to American English. British English, a pretty penny is definitely charging enough money for that service. It's where they make the most money per hour. If you want to think about billables, this is where the premium rates come in.
I think that's a universal phrase, by the way.
There we go. My British self
You're,
having to
it's
apologize.
applicable on both sides of the pond, I think. Um, One of the common themes across industries is the gap between talking about AI and actually using it. I did a webinar, about 6 months ago, and I asked everybody who was in the audience on the webinar, Tell me about how you're using AI. And everybody said, I bet out of 100 people, there were maybe 15 or 20 people who are actually using AI. Everybody else is looking into it. Everybody else says, I really want to do it, but they're not really using AI. So let's get practical here. How have tax firms already implemented AI in the real world workflows? And what have they learned? And how can firms that haven't started yet avoid being overwhelmed like the cases that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, to take that, one bite at a time, I'd say, firms need to be very thoughtful in their approach. They need to, take bite-sized pieces of an implementation and understand what they're really trying to do with whatever AI they're trying to adopt, right? So, you know, if you're trying to, and I'll just use, filed as an example, if you're trying to automate your tax preparation, right? Maybe you want to start on a tranche of returns that you feel very comfortable with, and that you've maybe you've maybe already done and you know very well, right? And that way you can compare results, from what we're doing to results that your team has produced, right? And that way you have a very clear, standard as to what quality should look like on your end.
Hmm.
And that way, you're not being sold, the snake oil, quote unquote, but rather, you're being sold a pilot and understanding what it's capable of, what it's not capable of, and where you can scale it across your firm, right?
Hmm.
So that's what I would say is probably one of the most important factors when trying to roll out this technology. But yeah, firms should be very very clear on what they're trying to achieve, what a win looks like, and what they're going to do with the results of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And to follow up to Ralph's point, it's a case that what we're hearing the most from firms is how is this going to now change my workflow? Because you're now telling me I'm not going to do the work. This mysterious black box called AI is going to do the work. And we have to give the explainability, just like if you were to, as a partner or a senior in any business and you work with a team who you delegate the work to, you want them to effectively, well, one, be following a task that you set them. You want them to two, deliver on the task, and you want them to three, be able to explain what you came to as a result in the task. And you might catch an error. You might say, well, hold on, you haven't done the following correctly. And you want to make sure that when you teach that person, traditionally they learn. The great thing about AI is it does all of those three things where it effectively can receive a task, it can do the task, it can explain the task if you, of course, control it correctly. And then the last and most important thing here is that it learns. You say it once and it learns and doesn't ask the same question twice. Now, to be able to get to that moment, you have to be able to put time and effort into it. So more importantly, we're seeing firms who are able to put the time in to be able to get the most results out. It's not an overnight success. That's what we tell all of our firms. It's just like taking a junior and teaching them everything that you know. But the most important thing here is that we are, of course, dealing with highly subjective work,
Hmm.
which is truly opinion based. There is, of course, objective matters in terms of numbers, but subjectivity in taxes is where the gray area comes. So you're effectively having to do the work as good as they are. And that's when we say we're not going to be 100%. We're never going to be 100%. We cannot be 100% as good as the tax professional. But this is where tax professional meets AI and gets, better. That's where excellence gets created. But it's not a case this work can ever be replaced. This is a job that professionals needed to sign it off and make sure that the work is being done correctly. So we just say we get it to the 5 yard line. Our job is to get it there. It's your job to get it into the end zone.
Yeah, I think in a lot of industries that I've talked to, there's a lot of skepticism, at least in the early adoption phase of it for people. Once they realize what it can do, um, they get nervous about, well, okay, is this going to replace me? Is this going to replace my people? And I think what people have to understand is that AI really is a way to make people more effective and more, yeah, able to do more work and more work more accurately, rather than replace them. Um, Early adopters always have stories. For the firms that already are using AI in your industry, What can you tell us about the ROI they're achieving? Are they seeing measurable time savings, faster document processing, higher throughput per employee? Is it translating into new revenue or just reduced workload?
I love a story. If I just can just give a story from one of our firms called JCG Tax. I love one of the stories. After tax season last year, we pumped through about 15,000 tax returns. We're about 10xing that number this year. And one of the firms said to us in our follow-ups, because honestly, we can barely get hold of them during tax season, let alone their life partners getting a hold of touch of them. Their vendors are definitely not speaking to them. So, we only get to hear from them post 4:15 usually. And one of them said, my team came up to me and we're asking like, have we got a problem with our customers because we're seeing less work? And kind of ironically, it was like the fact that the AI is doing the bulk of the work, and effectively they thought something was wrong in their firm. So I like that story. I really love to hear when firms are seeing new opportunities where, transparently, if I'm honest with you, Ken, we are still on the discovery with the firms. They are, like Ralph kind of proposed, taking what they did last year or currently this year and running AI alongside it. Most firms that we work with are not just shutting down things. We actually advise against that. We don't say, okay, turn off how you did it traditionally and now use this random AI thing you don't know anything about. Run us side by side. And now at the end of the tax season, compare those two results. And that's what we consider a pilot. The pilot is done. And now they can say, wow, we would get this much time back. And now, what are they able to do at that time? Well, honestly, we're going to see this year, Ken. I'm really excited about those
Yeah,
results. But
it'll be,
Ralph may have some comments.
yeah.
Yeah, just real quick on that. Another one of our customers, Gelada, they actually said that they felt like they had 4 times more the capacity than they had the previous year, and that was despite being down a person in the middle of tax season.
Wow.
So I'd say that the ROI is very real. The knock on effects of that ROI are also very real, right? People are getting to go home at a reasonable time during tax season. That's part of what the time is going towards. The other part of that time is being spent on more time with clients, identifying opportunities to help serve their clients better. And then I'd say that another part of that time is just focusing on the business, right? Because a lot of these firm owners, they're stuck working alongside their employees instead of orchestrating their firm the way that it should be done, right? They should be, calling the direction for their firm instead of working alongside their employees. And yeah, that's great for morale, but it's really bad for growth.
Yeah.
It's really bad for positioning yourself strategically in the industry as the thought leader. Those things require time, and if you're there working on the front lines, you don't have that time. So I'd say that the ROI is very real, but again, it's very dependent on where these firms decide to focus that time that they're getting back.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the ROI is a soft ROI that you really have to figure out um, where they're getting a benefit from AI, and how that helps them on the bottom line by building better relationships or getting other new business out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's where many of the AI vendors like ourselves, who become AI partners, are also doubling down this year. Is like, show me the long-term gains. Don't just report to me that you've saved me this much time. Like, what does that actually mean? And that's why I'm teaching the professional what this means for their workflows is so, so critical at this stage. So it's too short in our journey. We're only just over a year old to be able to, and tax season is such a short, narrow window to be able to give you quantifiable ROI. But I could definitely tell you what we're seeing today is a tax professional who traditionally would spend maybe 10 to 12 hours a day doing tax prep during tax season is spending a handful of hours doing it now. So it's a
Ken,
big, big shift.
Well,
Ken,
you talked a minute ago, a few minutes ago, about taking that AI can help you get to the 5 yard line, but it's really the people that are going to get it over into the end zone. What are the current limitations of AI for accounting professionals, and how do they see those limitations evolving in the near and long-term future?
Transparently, we use an amalgamation of different models who we've built partnerships with at a enterprise level, which means that the data stays with filed and never goes up to them in terms of storage, etc. But these partners, they are good, but the average of an accuracy, if you collected all the big boys, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and you put them in a line and you said which is the best, we'd probably say it's OpenAI, and it gets you about 28% accuracy versus a human tax preparer when it comes to really complex tax returns. File just is about to release a data set, and I'm sure it will be released by the time we publish this podcast, so we can tell you the results, is that File is about 48% more accurate than the big traditional models that are out there today. So we've been using the best bits of the best models, and that's what Fold is doing, is trying to use the interoperability to choose this is the best model for this, the best model for the following. But the most important thing to say here is that these firms want it to be 100%. Being 75, 85% accurate is not good enough. And that's why we have to tell the firms, like, our job is not to file the tax return. It is your job. Our job is to automate the grunt work of all the low value repetitive tasks, giving you the hours back. And then you take it over the line yourself. You do the super, super complex stuff that at the end of the day, our models can't do right now. So we're seeing that improve. I mean, just to be here today and quoting the percentages that we have already in just 12 months gives us great, great encouragement that 12 more months from now, we're going to be as close to 100% as humanly possible at that time.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting technology to apply against a business that really does need, as we said up front, modernization. Leroy and Ralph, time always moves on too fast on this program, so as usual, we've run out of time. I want to thank you both for joining me today and shedding light on where tax preparation is headed. What you've illustrated is that AI in accounting isn't just an efficiency play, it's really a fundamental re-imaging of how tax work's being done, how firms scale, and how client service is delivered. It's about giving accountants superpowers, not replacing them. Um, Thank you very much, guys. And just as Filed is transforming how tax professionals operate, Performix builds AI agents that help all businesses re-engineer how they work, streamlining processes, uncovering insights, and helping teams scale with speed and precision. Performance 2025 mission is stated as AI for every business, which means creating systems that are accessible, affordable, and deeply practical, from marketing and CX to operations, finance, and beyond, including accounting, it sounds like. If you're curious how an AI agent could enhance your team's performance or precision, visit performixbiz.com. That's PERFORMIXBIZ.com. Thanks again for joining me today on TechKNOWlogy, and until next time, stay smart, stay curious, and keep innovating.